Without further ado, I would love to introduce Yogesh Dada or Yogesh. As Sarah mentioned, I have had the pleasure of being his shishya since the age of 18, so not very many years, right? Yogeshi, are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Yeah.
So Yogeshi, you're celebrated as one of the finest tabla players of our time, with deep lineage through your training under Ustad Khan Sahab. For those who may not know, could I ask that you share a bit about your journey into the world of tabla, your inspiration, and also your path, which allowed you to bring you to where you are today?
Uh, well, that was a tihai of questions, I must say. But anyway, I'd like to thank the Melbourne Indian Classical Music Society to have me on this web meeting to celebrate the life of Zakir Bhai. Uh, Hello to everyone who's on the meeting. Coming back to your questions, Stefan, my musical journey began when I was 4 years old because my father, Pandit Dinkar Kaikini, and my mother, Srimati Shashikala Kaikini, were very, very well known vocalists in their own right. And I was exposed to Indian classical music from my childhood. So I was, in a sense, born in a musical family, bred in a musical family, listened to music 24 by 7 since I was an infant. So it was part of me as I was growing up. And I showed early signs of taking to the tabla since I was about 3 years old. And so my father decided to uh, initiate me and gave me early lessons into playing the tabla, to which I continued pursuing it by myself as an interest. Maybe it was inborn in me. And so I happened to just play along, learn, and be with the tabla as much as I loved it since childhood. And eventually, it led to a point where my father realized that I should go to a proper guru to learn in the Guru Shishya tradition. So he sent me to Pandit Taranath Rao, a very, very knowledgeable tabla player from the Farrukhabad Gharana, who created very many disciples who are great tabla players in Mumbai and across the globe, even today. And I could learn from him when I was 6 years old for just a year and a half, after which he left to be a teacher and a professor at the Cal Arts in the Bay Area in Los Angeles. Thereafter, there was a gap of about 2 years, and Ustad Khan Sahab was also a very close friend of my father's. And my father had been watching his performances and Zakir Bhai's performances. And so when I was 9 years old, he requested Khan Sahib to listen to me and thereafter decide whether I was worthy of being his disciple or not. So my father invited him and Zakir Bhai to my house, and they very graciously agreed to be a part of an evening dinner before which I played whatever I remembered as a kid, whatever little I knew. And Khan Sahib was, uh, you know, he heard me and he asked my father to bring me to his house on a certain day within a week or 10 days. And so we landed up there. And as at that time as a kid, I never knew what was happening because that evening in Khan Saab's house, all the furniture was cleared off and there was like arrangements for a baitak and so on. And so my father thought that we landed up at Abbaji's house on the wrong day because there was something else happening there. So my mother inquired and asked Ammaji whether, you know, it was okay for us to, whether we came on the right day. And so Ammaji said, of course, it's absolutely fine because Asab wants to perform the Ganda Bandhan ceremony for me.
Wow.
So that came as a mighty surprise and a shock both.
Mm.
Uh, I didn't know what was happening. I didn't even know what the significance of a Ganda Bandhan ceremony was because I was just 9 years old. So, ceremoniously there was this plate of, jaggery and peanuts there, good chana, as
Mm.
they say, symbolic, complete food that is fed by the guru to the shishya and the shishya to the guru after the Ganda Bandhan ceremony is done. So all of that happened, and well, there I was. Before I knew it, I became like another son of the Ustad Al family, and that's where my journey began. And whatever happened thereafter is was my destiny. And you know, uh, that process subconsciously uh, continues even today.
Mm. No, that's incredible. And even, I myself have seen Zakir ji call you his younger brother, both on stage and off stage. But what I find incredible is that, from the age of 4, you've been surrounded by these phenomenal musicians through both of your parents. What I would love to understand is how, in your mind, do you feel Zakir ji has influenced your understanding of music and the art of tabla playing?
Well, uh, like like you just mentioned in the introduction, and Saurabh Bhai also mentioned. I mean, who has he not influenced? That's the
Mm,
question. But he's influenced many people across the globe, not only artists, even listeners, even family, friends, even people who he may have touched even for just a few moments. So he was that kind of a person. So you can only imagine that a person like me who grew up in that house, learning from Abbaji, who saw Zakir Bhai's Riyaz, who saw him coming in and out of the house, who saw him, I mean, who I interacted with when he was very young in his peak, just casually sitting around, talking to him, ambling around in the compound of the building,
mm,
traveling with him, performing with him on the stage. So, I mean, multi-layered, uh, you know, a multi-layered journey with him. So it was pretty intense, obviously. I mean, it's very hard to explain in words what the loss I feel today.
yeah.
It's impossible to put it down in words, but he was my he was my elder brother. He was my guru. He was my inspiration. He was my friend, philosopher, guide, uh, and much, much more than that. I mean, uh, at every step of life, he was my bridge between Abbaji and me because Abbaji was such a towering personality.
Mm,
Uh, in the Guru Shishya tradition, we are talking about 47 years ago, approx. One would never ask Guru a single question when we would take training, when we would take talim. Those were the days when questions were never asked, answers were seeked through
mm,
talim. So that was the process. And to encounter such a huge generation gap between Abbaji and me was a challenge for me. Uh, but but given having said that, Abbaji was also an incredibly sensitive guru, and the way he taught me, the way he groomed me, was something very special. Uh, but along with that, as a student, as a growing student, I had so many questions that came to my mind that I used to be fearful of asking Abbaji. So Zakir Bhai became that bridge between Abbaji and me. I saw him performing. I saw him in close quarters. I saw him practicing. I saw him, in so many different ways. And
Mm,
so many of those questions were answered without even talking to Abbaji or without even asking him. It
mm,
was because of interacting with Zakir Bhai. And Zakir Bhai's input was, you know, colossal in my life. And so it is even today, and it will always be till the end of my life. Uh, Someone who, through his performances, through the interactions with him, through having spent time with him on stage, performing live, off the stage, uh, just, you know, subconsciously, I learned so many things,
mm.
not only about tabla, about life, about about how to be as a person, about how to uh, deal with tough situations, how to deal with you know mm, how to deal with people all across the globe. So he was an incredible personality. He was larger than life, in
Mm.
spite of apart from being a musician. So yeah, it's been tremendously profound uh, to be a part. And I mean, I consider myself extremely fortunate to have experienced a human being like this in my life and an artist.
Oh, absolutely. And I find it interesting that you've gone ahead and said that he was the connector or the bridge between Abaji and yourself. And, you know, for me as a student of Tabla, what I've felt with Zakir Ji whenever I've met him is he's so approachable and he's you can connect with him. You know, my kids met Zakir Ji and they were in awe of this guy, right? They've never known who Zakir Ji was prior, but they're like he's a really cool individual, right? Do you think well, I guess this leads to my next question. What, in your opinion, do you think made his style and his approach so distinctive? And yeah, let's start with that.
See, firstly, uh, going by what Abbaji told him when he was growing up in his artistic vision, uh, is not to copy him, is
Mm,
not to copy Abbaji. So that was tattooed in his head, and therefore uh, he wanted to not only make his own identity, but you see, he never refrained or never hesitated to express himself the way he felt as a musician, and he never, being a very traditional Indian classical musician, he never stopped being positively influenced by world music, and this was the actual game changer for me.
mm,
I mean,
mm,
as I see it.
mm,
You see, many traditional musicians from India, they keep themselves or they kept themselves shielded from, other influences of music. Uh, not not looking at it in a negative way, but just kind of being either ignorant or being completely focused in your art form, just not finding the time or the inclination to understand different musics of the world. But Zakir Bhai, having had the geographical advantage of being in the US at a very young age, uh, he got influenced by everything. I mean, you name it, right from the hard, heavy metal, hard rock, and all of that, to pop, to jazz, to hip hop, and to blues, and whatever you may call it. All those varieties of West that comes under Western music or Western influence, as we call it. But you see, the greatness of the man lies where you allow those qualities of every single genre of music to affect you or to influence you positively. And at the same time, never uproot yourself from tradition.
Mm.
So that is what kept him always in the hunt to enrich his musicianship. And so, apart from being a tabla player and in Indian classical music, he also learned Western classical. He took a degree in Western classical. He learned how to write music. He realized how harmonies are made. It's not about just rhythm and tabla language and tabla compositions. So for him, a 40-piece orchestra on the stage as well as a tabla solo was nearly the same thing. A tabla solo to him, he expressed the tabla solo like a 40-piece orchestra on the
Mm.
stage. So he could correlate uh, his music with so many other musics of the world, and that led to him interacting with so many great musicians, so many great percussionists, and he allowed all that, be it language, be it technique, be it composing, uh, it you know widened his scope of looking at music so much, and the genius was already inside him. So
Mm.
so all of that put together, you know, it gave his music a completely new dimension, and that is why he became a trendsetter.
Mm.
He did not become a trendsetter because he had decided to. He became a trendsetter because he allowed these influences all across the globe to touch him and touch his music positively, to bring about something new that had never happened before.
Wow.
Be it the technique of the congas that came into the tabla, be
Mm.
it the technique of the frame drum from the Middle East that came into the tabla. I mean, he brought so many techniques into tabla subtly without tabla players even knowing that these techniques have come from there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's it's a totally different topic. It's a technical topic, but I'm just letting you know because I've seen it, I've experienced it,
Yeah.
and so many. Uh, so he, as a musician, he grew so so vast and intense from within that eventually uh, tabla became a limitation for his musicianship. I
Wow.
mean, I
Yeah.
saw him. Finally, I saw him at that place where he was imagining when he would play. He was imagining probably something that he would want to uh, materialize in some other way with probably a group of musicians. But something like that he would do. He would express through a tabla solo piece. So. Uh, Using the baya in so many different ways, bringing so many different techniques into the tabla.
Mm.
He was a trendsetter. He revolutionized uh, the normal basic technique of tabla. He revolutionized it to, he took it several notches ahead. Uh, so yeah, I mean, that's his music became sublime. Uh, you know, the body when you age tires out.
Mm.
Uh, there are a lot of things that you cannot do what you did at your peak, but it did not. It never seemed like that. It The sublimity of his music at that level. It always felt like he could still do anything. The connection between his thought and his hand. It always remained. Anything that he imagined happened. I mean, I saw him. I've seen him at his peak. Anything that he imagined in terms of creating something on the spot just came out through his hands.
Just
So
a
there was
direct
no
neural connection. Yeah.
absolutely there was not even a fraction of delay between what he thought and what he could do with his
Wow.
hands,
Mm.
and that still remained till his last. So
Mm.
a musician of this level happens only once in a few hundred years.
Mm. It's interesting. You had brought up the fact that he had this Western influence, and the rock, pop, heavy metal, etc. And then of course he would come back to India and you know pursue classical music. And I remember us having conversations in India, and you were saying that because he was a disruptor. That's the truth, right? He was breaking boundaries, and as a consequence, he was getting a lot of I'm going to use the word negativity for want of a better word, because he was he was moving out of the general mold. How do you think he managed that? Like, what did he
See,
do to manage that sort of thing?
uh, there's only one way to manage it, is to have confidence in what you're doing.
Mm,
And he was sure of what he was doing. He was confident of what he was doing. At the same time, as I said earlier, he was grounded, he was rooted to tradition. He
mm,
did not, he could play uh, tabla of any gharana. Being a Punjab gharana tabla player, born in to an ustad and a guru and a father belonging to the Punjab gharana, fair, he learned all of that. But he could play tabla from any gharana, from Banaras gharana, from Delhi, from Lucknow, from Farrukhabad, Ajrada. He took the beauties of all gharana and amalgamated it into his style.
mm,
And therefore, he was deeply rooted to tradition. So when he did something, as they say today, out of the box,
mm,
he was very well aware of how much he was deviating, where he was deviating to. And let me not, you know, forget to mention here that he had the backing of being in San Francisco, living there most of his time, and interacting with musicians, traveling on tours. He had the backing of having Ustad, none other than the great legendary Ustad Ali Akbar Khan Sahab,
of
just
course.
next door to him.
Hmm,
He had Ravi Shankarji with whom he performed, and he had Abbaji who was there. So these three pillars of his life, they always kept him, earthed,
mm,
and kept him grounded. And you see, our uh, uh, Indian classical music is, yes, it is about learning the grammar, it is about learning the technique, it is about learning those compositions, it is about practicing. Yes, it's all of that. But beyond that, it's about learning the sanskars. Uh,
mm,
I don't know what the right word for sanskar is in English. Very difficult to translate it, but something that you cannot learn only by sitting and learning face to face with your guru.
mm.
It's that. It's that which you learn subconsciously every day. Just by being around with a great, artist, like maybe Ali Akbar Khan Sahab or Pandit Ravi Shankar ji, you know.
Mm,
So
mm.
Indian classical music is learned not only by sitting in front of your guru and learning, but it's also learned through sanskar, subconsciously by being in that atmosphere. And Ali Akbar Khan Sahab, Ravi Shankar ji, Abbaji provided that atmosphere to him.
Yeah.
So that's the advantage he had. And so when he came to India, he would never forget that that he belonged. He belonged to that tradition, and he
Mm,
had those sanskars, and he respected that. So no matter how much he experimented and kind of maybe even got criticism, or maybe even people had questions on what he was doing, he was confident that the backing and the blessings of his guru and those sanskars
yeah.
will eventually uh, you know take him to a place where he wanted to be. He had complete clarity about that. And as I said, he never hesitated to express, he never hesitated to take the risk. He, in my opinion, in my life, I have seen, say, three generations of great musicians. He was probably, you could count on your fingers, one of those, the riskiest musicians I've
Mm.
ever seen in my life.
Absolutely.
You know, those who are practicing music or those who are performing music or learning music will understand what I'm saying. Is Zakir Hussain was an artist who used to throw himself in a zone where he would not know what he's going to do next,
Mm,
in no man's land. And I've seen him do that in performances. He would just throw himself into no man's land and just create something that had never happened before. So, the other side of taking such a risk is that you could fall flat on your face. And he has done that too.
mm,
He's fallen flat on his face many times. But I even had this conversation with him. And I asked him one day, I said, Zakir bhai, you venture into areas while performing, you venture into areas, whether it's accompaniment or solo or even playing with uh, jazz or new age music. You just take off randomly without any planning, without any real thought, and then you start building it up. What is the guarantee that you will pull it off? He's saying there is no guarantee. And I'm not afraid of failure. If I fail, because I know I failed now and I know what I can do next time not to fail. So he says, maybe once, twice, thrice I will fail, but the fourth time or the fifth time when it happens, you know, that satisfaction, that beauty, and what gets created on the spot will make me forget the failure that I had earlier.
that's
And he said this was the biggest lesson given to him by Ustad Ali Akbar Khan Sahab.
wow.
So yeah, I mean
That's
that
incredible.
was that was how he was as a musician.
I'm speechless. That's incredible. What that just to unpackage all of that is going to take some time. But let's just shift to a slightly lighter note. As you had mentioned, you shared a lot of deep connections with Zakir Ji, both musically and personally. Are there any lighter moments or humorous stories you've got about Zakir Ji that you'd wanted to go ahead and share with us?
So so many of them. Uh, one very one such moment or one such evening that happened in San Francisco was 25 years ago, exactly in 2000. I had gone to see him. I had called him earlier. I was on the West Coast. I'm sorry, I was on the East Coast, and I called him. I had like a week off in my tour, and I called him, and he happened to be free at that time. So I said, "Can I come and see you?" He said, "Yeah, yeah, of course. I'll be more than happy. Just take a flight, and we'll sort the rest out."
Hmm.
So so yeah, I took a flight. I Those were the days where there was no mobile phones. I didn't have uh, uh, any Google Maps. I didn't have any laptop, and I just followed his instructions. And I landed up in San Francisco, and then I took a bus. I went to San Rafael and got off at a bus stop. And then he said he would come and pick me up.
Hmm.
And as usual, Zakir Bhai, with his ever so crowded, busy schedule, got stuck somewhere.
Hmm.
And I happened to be waiting at the bus stop for like 3 hours. And every 45 minutes, I went to the, you know,
The payphone, yeah.
pay
Yeah.
phone and put 25 cents. And I left like 4 or 5 messages. Eventually, I said, okay, leave it. Maybe he's genuinely got stuck somewhere. He'll come and connect with me later. So I head to a nearby motel.
Hmm.
Fortunately, I remembered the name. Uh, it was called Villa Inn.
Hmm.
And I went to the taxi driver and I said, "Can you take me to Villa Inn?" I didn't even know the address. So he said, "Where is it?" I said, "San Rafael." So he removed the diary and he looked up the address and said, "Oh, okay, I'll take you there." So he took me there. I went to the Villa Inn and I removed my passport and I said, "Can I get a room?" So he says, "Okay." The guy at the reception types my name and he says, "Your room has been reserved."
All right.
So I said,
By
"By
who?
whom?"
Yeah.
So he said, "Mr. Hussain." Said, what? Okay. Uh, Zakir Bhai knows that I'm coming and he's booked my room, but he's obviously got stuck somewhere and he couldn't come and pick me up. So, anyways, it was a long flight, you know, difference of 3 hours. I was I was shattered by the time it was late evening. So I just grabbed a bite somewhere, went to the room, and I went to sleep.
Mm.
And at 12 midnight, my door was being banged so hard, and I was jet lagged. I was fast asleep, and I woke up, you know, and I was startled. I said, "What's going on?" So I was all, messed up, and I opened the door to check who it was. Zakir Bhai is standing there at 12 midnight. He's asking me, "Arey, you've gone to sleep? This is the time when artists actually wake up. Why are you sleeping?" And coolly, in a very casual, joking, jovial manner, like the way he used to be with everybody.
Yeah.
So, so I said, okay. So what do we do now? So he says, let's go to this movie. X-Files, the movie has come. Let's go and
Wow.
watch this movie.
At like
So I
what,
said,
30, 1
there's red.
o'clock?
Yeah, like at last show, 1 o'clock.
Mm.
My eyes are all red, and I'm only half asleep. So he says, come on, come on. This is not the time to sleep. So I said, okay. I went, I washed my face and changed, and I went. He drove me, and uh, he grabbed another burrito and a Coke for me
Mm.
and him. And we went to the theater, and he bought 2 tickets, and we entered the theater, and the whole theater was empty. There was nobody there. It was just me and Zakir Bhai in the theater.
Yeah, because it was 1 o'clock.
So 1 o'clock on a weekday, nobody's going to go to the movies.
Yeah.
So because the two of us were there, the guy had to run the movie for us. So
Amazing.
so we sat there and we watched the movie. At the end of the movie, he looks at me and he says, "Did you understand anything?" So I said, somewhat. Maybe I need to watch it again. He said, "I didn't understand anything. Chalo, let's go home." So then, after watching the whole movie, he took me home. And then he made coffee, and then like that was like at 3:30 in the morning, uh like 3 o'clock. He made coffee, and then we sat, and then he put Mehdi Hasan Saab's ghazals
Wow.
softly in the background. And then we got talking and chatting and about, you know, uh what how these musicians would have been in those days in Pakistan, about Mia Ji, about the Punjab Gharana lineage, and whatnot. I mean, just kept chatting and chatting till 5 o'clock in the morning. And then he dropped me back home.
Amazing.
So, yeah. And the following 2 days was uh, an extended rendezvous. So, yeah, it'll take too much time to explain how much I enjoyed those 3, 4 days with him. But yeah, I mean, he took me to various restaurants. Every day he took me to a new restaurant. And every day he took me to a new coffee place. He made me try everything that was special in that area, and
Amazing.
yeah, yeah, he
Yeah.
was.
And that's it.
It's
That just exemplifies how much of an incredible human being he was, huh? It's so
he was a
incredible.
he was an exceptional human being. He was a great, as they say, he was a giver.
Mm.
Uh, and when he came to India, and I used to travel with him, he used to always have a wad of 100 rupee notes in his pocket, like
Mm.
25 years ago. Anybody who came from you know his old house area in Mahim in Bombay, where they grew up, anybody who came to me and meet him, he would give them money,
Wow.
take some money and go. Anybody who helped him, uh, in the hotel, somebody who carried his bag used to give him money. Yeah, so he always had this thing, always a giver, always recognizing uh, the other person's situation of life,
Mm.
always putting himself in their shoes and looking at it that way.
Incredible. Yogesh,
Yeah.
I know that you've squeezed this in between your busy schedule and touring. Would you be open to a couple of people ask or a few people or opening this up for a couple of questions?
So, yeah.
If anybody wanted to ask Yogesh a question, yeah, please feel free to put your virtual hand up on Zoom. And I think Sarah will unmute you.
I've just unmuted everyone anyway, so if anybody wants to ask, just jump in.
Kush, I'm sure you've got
I
multiple
think that we're
questions.
really scared of asking you questions.
If nobody's asking, I'm Vivek. Can I ask you a question? Yeah.
Yeah, well, sure.
So I'm I I'm not into much of into Indian classical, but of late, due to influence of my wife, who is part of this society here, I fell in love with this music. And because of my long commute and drive, I always enjoy listening to Tabla by Sir Zakir Hussain. And I notice that it helps me to recover from my anxiety and depression. I tried other instruments, doesn't happen. Why? Why tabla does it to my brain like this? I don't know. Any answer?
Well,
It's all right. I don't.
all I can say is you your your interior is connecting to that vibe the best, and that is tabla is making you relax. The vibrations of that music are making you stressless, and maybe rhythm and the way rhythm the way the rhythm experience is coming out through that music is making you give that feeling. So I think, yeah, I think your subconscious is relating to that and it's connecting to that. So those emotions are being taken care of. So yeah, people have different ways. A lot of different musics of the world affect people positively in different ways. So I think Zakir Bhai's recordings are that for you. So it's great.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Keep, yeah.
Ranjana, I think there's a
Ranjana
question.
ji, Ranjana ji had a question. Yes, thank you.
Ranjana? Yeah.
Yes. Can you see me? Yes, you can. All right. This is a question, Yogesh ji. Hearing how Ustad ji broke all the barriers and went from his deep-rooted Indian classical music training to training in every other genre, I see the similarity with Dr. L. Subramaniam also, who's stayed rooted in the Carnatic music and has gone and learnt every other kind of music and has worked with musicians all over the world. So while you have some musicians who are breaking the barriers, I still hear a lot of resentment from various people that I interact with or that I've heard before, who have this thing of looking down upon somebody who's breaking the barriers and moving out of the fold, or trying to bring in a new thing which is not part of the traditional learning. Do you find that is restricted, or has that loosened up a bit now, that more and more people are integrating other music genres with the thing?
Yes, of course. It's loosened up a lot. See, it's been more than 20 years, more than 2 decades that this has been in process. And when something like this is done, uh, when it's new, when it's fresh, there's bound to be flack because traditionalists are not going to understand what's going to happen 20 years hence because maybe they don't have the far-sighted vision that some do possess when they are actually, in this process, and they can very clearly see the destination. So, so firstly, it's been a process which has taken a few decades, and it's on for a few decades. And the young generation now is is uh, is trying to understand that process. And musicians of my age, or maybe a generation after me, are pursuing that. They're trying to understand it. They're trying to study it. They're trying to
Yep.
not necessarily emulate him, but they're trying to do it in their own way. And so it's definitely loosened up.
Yeah. So this is not a question. It's just a little trivia, something that I'm sharing. When Ustadji performed with Sitara Devi way back in 1968-69, I was a young teenager, and I was sitting in the audience, and that's the first time I felt my heartbeat go boom, boom, boom after watching him play. So he's been my crush, my first crush, ever since.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so to answer Vivek's thing, his tabla playing probably makes his heart beat in the right rhythm, and therefore he feels less stressed out.
Exactly.
Yeah, just
Thank you.
one more question from Amruta.
Hello, namaste. This is
Namaste.
Mother Shruti here.
I'm Amrita, that's Shruti. Yeah.
I'm Shruti. This is not a question as such, but this is a heartfelt tribute to the great Ustad Zakir Hussain ji. I echo Ranjana ji's sentiments when she said that he was her first crush. Well, when I first met him 44 years ago, I was a young girl, and a common friend introduced us. And he was, it wasn't a crush as such, but I was so simply awed by him, by his persona. He had this Krishna-like quality, which made him feel equally dear to everyone. And everyone thought that he was special only to them, and that they were special only to him. He had that quality. And it
Correct.
was,
Childlike quality.
it's a very childlike, quality. And he kept holding my hand for such a long time, until all the people who were in the backstage, had finished speaking to him. And finally, he let me go. It was, I think, one of the best moments of interacting with various classical musicians, because I have learned in a past life, I have learned music. In fact, I have also seen many performances of your father-in-law, I think, Gaurang Kodaikalji. He was my Facebook friend also. Yeah. And so it was, I think, his Western influence also made him a bit more outgoing and friendly and approachable. Which was a very unique thing for us. It was just amazing. And when we heard about his sad demise, we were just so devastated, because we did not have it coming. We did not know he was ill. We did not know he was suffering. And suddenly it was so.
Yes.
And I think today, sir, your sharing of your experiences with Abbaji, with Zakirji, with us, is somehow giving us a lot of comfort. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I have a question, sir, Yogesh ji, for you. Do you have any of your favorite performances of Zakir Hussain ji that you would encourage us to listen to or watch? Anything that's
Of course. There's one on YouTube where I played with him at the MTDC, Maharashtra Tourism Development Corporation festival in Aurangabad,
Okay.
at a heritage site.
Oh,
And actually, kind of, not exactly the Ellora festival, but it happened in front of what is known as the Sunehri Mahal. It was an open air stage, and I remember it was about 4 or 5 degrees Celsius. And the previous day I had performed with Pandit Shiv Kumar Sharma in a very small town called Jalgaon.
Mm.
And Zakir Bhai was to play the solo the next day. And I knew about it. And I had no plans to actually uh, go there because I had no transportation to transport me there. It was like a 3-hour drive to Aurangabad. And so that recording is there. I think there are 3 or 4 parts.
Mm.
And what happened was he suffered a slip disc. And uh, he had suffered a slip disc. And he was kind of trying to get by a couple of concerts before actually going home and taking complete bed rest, which was advised by the doctor. And this solo concert happened to be one of those. And so he sent word to me. He said, can you come to Aurangabad? I'm playing a solo. So I said, Zakir Bhai asking me to come for his solo. I mean, what is this? This is like a king inviting someone to his darbar. So I said, of course, I'll be there by all means. So I reached there, and he never said that I have a slip disc. I'm in pain. I'm in discomfort. I don't know how I'm going to do this. And nothing like that. He was chilled out. And then I saw him uh, walking holding his waist on one side. He was walking slowly. So I asked him, "Are you okay?" This was in the afternoon. When I reached there, we were having lunch. So uh, yeah, it's a little bit of a back problem. And then someone who was with him, a roadie who was one of my Guru-bhais, who was carrying his tablas, he said, Arey, Zakir Bhai's had a slip disc. You don't know that? So I asked Zakir Bhai, he said, I asked him, are you in pain? I believe it's a slip disc. It's a back problem. It's a severe back problem. He says, yeah, it's a back problem, but it's behind me. No worries.
He was such a ready-witted fellow.
Yeah. So even in that incredible, horrifying, howling nerve pain, he was chilled out. He was cool. All he said was, so anyway, he's telling me, now that you've come here, will you play with me? So I said, what? So are you joking? The whole festival has been advertised. The whole concert has been advertised in your name. Well, what am I going to be doing there, sitting with you on the stage? So I asked him. He says, you don't have to worry about that. That's my worry. So I want you to be on the stage. So I said, okay, your hukum, your order, I'll be there. So that's how it happened. So it was thrown as a surprise to me. First of all, a surprise to be in Aurangabad for his solo. That was a surprise. Then the shock. He says, you have to be on the stage with me. So I was wondering, what am I going to do there? This is in 1997. What am I going to do there sitting on the stage with him? But Zakir Bhai was Zakir Bhai. He played along. He made me play. He made me involved, got me involved in the solo, in the entire presentation. And yeah, it turned out to be one of the most incredible learning experiences of my life, and unforgettable. So it's on YouTube. It's in 3 or 4 parts. You can watch it.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you so much, Yogesh. To everybody on this call, we're very, very fortunate this year that Yogesh will be coming, or Yogesh will be coming to Australia in April for the purpose of conducting workshops, masterclasses, and of course concerts, both in Sydney and Melbourne. I'm not sure whether anybody knows, but apart from being a phenomenal musician, he's an incredible guru. He has shaped and molded some of the finest young tabla players in the world at the moment. One such individual, a lot of patrons of this music society would know, Yashwant Vaishnav. You've all had the pleasure of hearing him in Melbourne a couple of years ago. If you wanted any further information with respect to Yogesh's tour in Australia, please feel free to reach out to Saurabh, myself, or Jay Dabgar. Guruji, Yogesh, thank you very, very much. I appreciate you taking the time out and sharing your thoughts around Zakir Ji and his life and your personal experiences with him. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Stephan and Saurabh. It was a pleasure to share whatever I could. Although I'm still recovering from what has happened in the last month, but it was heartening to be with everyone and share my feelings and my thoughts, making me feel lighter as well. Thank you.
Pranam, thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Moving on to, I guess, something a little bit lighter, which is the listening session. What's incredible is that we're very blessed to be in this day and age where a lot of Zakir Ji's body of work has been well documented and shared by mediums such as YouTube, as Yogesh rightfully mentioned about that Aurangabad solo. And so when Saurabh asked me to go ahead and curate a listening session, it wasn't so much a challenge for me to find inspiring bodies of work. It was more about what should I select because there was just so much. And so what I decided to do was just share with you some of a few of my favorite YouTube videos and interviews of Zakir Ji. And so the first one I wanted to start with was is a Tabla solo of Zakir Ji's. And for me, I feel that this is a fantastic example of his absolute brilliance. It displays a deep control of his tabla and daga, his lay, and more importantly, how he builds creative tension before he moves into his next qaida, rela, or rav. So, Saurabh, if you don't mind just sharing the first video.
Yep, just give me a second. It's coming up now.
what an incredible example of absolute musicianship. The next one, again, if you wanted a copy of the presentation, it'll have all the links of the YouTube videos, and so of course you can watch these interviews and the solos or the concerts after the fact. Please reach out to Saurabh; he'll pass it across to you. The next one is an interview which actually delves into the role of a tabla player. But what I really like about this video is how much of an incredible communicator Zakir Ji was. And he was able to use beautiful metaphors to describe the role of a tabla player so that people would be able to relate to absolutely what he was saying. For me, I feel like this is also why his music and tabla solos are so relatable, because it's really his ability to absolutely package information really well that for me personally is why his music tends to transcend so beautifully across the globe. Saurabh, do you want to cue up that next one?
भाई पंजाब घराने का तबला सुनना है, जाकिर को बुलाते हैं, सुन लीजिए. और उसके बाद maybe if the relationship is good enough with other instrumentalists or somebody who would want me, then they would call me. Or else, why? If I am not able to contribute. What is a tabla player? It's a question that I have to put forth. There are good and bad elements for a tabla player. What does a tabla player want to do? A tabla player wants to make sure that he's noticed, that he's appreciated, and that he has played well enough to be invited again. Okay. Now, how do you accomplish that? Do you want to play so that the audience applauses and so they remember you and the organizer thinks, oh, they loved him very much, we'll call him? Or do you want to be the driver that you are supposed to be? आप अगर वैष्णो देवी जा रहे हैं, and if you are an older person or a senior person, आपको पालकी में बिठा के भी ले जाते हैं. So पालकी वाले चल रहे हैं. What does a पालकी वाला do? He makes sure that he avoids all the potholes, as smooth a ride that he can give the rider sitting in the palki all the way up to the place of worship. That's his job. So if the person sitting in the palki moves a little this way, the front one adjusts the opposite way so that the weight remains balanced, and so on. So the ride is very smooth. That is exactly what a tabla player has to do. He is the palki wala. And he has to make sure that when he's carrying this artist in the palki known as Rag Darbari, and the street that is known as Teen Tal, that he is walking that street of Teen Tal in the way needed so that the palki is stable.
क्या बात है, क्या बात है.
It becomes very difficult for a tabla player to sometimes be able to accomplish that, because there is this need to be able to be invited again. And whether that invitation has to come from the artist or from the organizer are two different things. Some tabla players feel that it is expected of them to be able to display their wares, and so it must be done. Some tabla players have come to terms with the idea that they have this specific duty to perform. But we have not been able to come to terms with totally how to balance this very treacherous job. And so when a tabla player does accomplish that and provides the accompaniment that is needed, 85% of the time it goes unnoticed. It's a thankless job in a way, because a tabla player must get on stage, gauge the mood on the stage, analyze the temperament of the artist, what the artist is feeling at the time, and accordingly help and provide. And when a tabla player gets a chance to play, and he's playing, does he concentrate on the artist, or does he concentrate on those two people who are just doing wah 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 kya baat hai miyan, wah wah jawab nahi, are wah kya baat hai, mukarrar? Does he concentrate on those? Does he even listen to the gut, and how after about the third cycle the sitar player or a sarod player has now changed the melodic vistar of the gut, just to let the tabla player know that, I mean, come on, I'm not a lehra player. And you must try and round up and finish. I mean, does he pay attention to that? Or does he, it's a very treacherous situation. It's a very, difficult place to be able to balance it. And a tabla player does that. And when he does do that, he goes unnoticed. When he doesn't do that, everybody applauses. But later on, will he be called by the same artist again? Who knows? We don't. So it's
Amazing.
really
Thanks,
a very kind of a shady situation to be in. And
So I thought after that particular interview, it would be poignant for us to hear him accompany Ali Akbar Khan Sahab and see him in his full form as accompanying artist, or as Zakir ji puts it, a palki wala, sorry.
point that you had actually asked to be shown.
No problems.
With apologies to those of us enjoying the extended alap.
So please feel free to reach out. Next one is an interview, and I thought it would be important for us to go ahead and run through this. It'd be a bit remiss of me to have a discussion about Zakir Ji and not include his body of work around fusion. And so this is an interview about his thoughts on fusion.
Glad you told me.
No, the reason is I know they've been eagerly awaiting this particular one, but there's when you look at the younger generation, there's a sentiment, whether it's true or not is one question I have for you, but assuming it's true, the trend seems to be more towards fusion and away from, I'll say, pure classical music.
Okay.
First of all, do you think that is just an artificial sentiment, or is it something real you perceive?
Well, I feel that there is an equal amount of interest in modern elements of fusion and the ancient elements of fusion. And I'm using the word fusion for ancient elements. Think about it. 1,000 years ago, in India, there existed a music called Prabandh Gaiki, Haveli Sangeet, Dhrupad. These were ancient forms of music which were played in the temples a lot. Then came the Muslims into India, and they brought this very learned Sufi, Turkish Sufi gentleman called Amir Khusro to India. Amir Khusro was a master of Kaul, Kalbana. These were Sufi forms of music, now popularly known as Qawwali. Kaul, Kalbana, now known as Qawwali. I should pause here and say Qawwali is actually the only seed Sufi form of music. Everything else is a copycat. Remember that. Amir Khusro was really, one of those person who believed in universality, humanity as being one, religious elements not being the divider. He was really taken by Prabandh Gaiki, Haveli Sangeet, and Dhrupad singing in the temples of India. And he took elements of those and combined it with the Sufi Qawwal and Qalbana music. And he came up with a form of music which eventually got known as, or became popular as, Khayal. Khayal is the premier North Indian classical form of music that anybody from Bhimsen Joshi or Gangubai Hangal or Kishori Amonkar or Ravi Shankar ji or Vilayat Khan Sahab, Ali Akbar Khan Sahab, everybody plays Khayal. So fusion already took place then, already was in place. Now imagine this, in its seed form, it had its do's and don'ts and what to do. But over the years, other elements came into play. Musicians moved to different parts of the country, and then they were influenced by the folk music of that country, of that state or that region, and that fusion took place. And suddenly you started hearing Pahadi in classical music, or you started hearing Kajri or Chaiti or Dadra or Tumri into classical music, and all this fusion started to take place. So fusion is not something that is like today. It has been going on forever, so it's not a new thing. So all Indian students of Indian classical music tradition in India are already sitting on something that is a hybrid, okay, and a mutated form, and so they're playing that. Then came the sound system that changed the way the instruments are played, music is played, another fusion. So that has happened. So what I'm trying to say is that when you talk about fusion, you have to understand that fusion is already in Indian classical music. Fusion is also considered the domain of something that requires drums and bass and keyboards and whatnot. No, not true. So in my 1960s and stuff, I used to hear Qawwali singers singing Qawwali with dholak players, tabla players, mandolins, banjos, all that stuff in an amplifier or something. So even the Sufi music at that point became fusion. So that happened. So my understanding of this, keeping all this in mind, is that there is an equal audience for traditional music and the way it's growing. It's still changing, it's still mutating. So that's what's happening with it. And then there's the fusion, known as fusion world these days. Like for instance, I played with Hariharanji in Civic San Jose. He sang ghazals. Ghazal is an old form, but he had a guitar player, he had a keyboard player, he had me playing tabla, and I also had some kind of a drum setup thing. So he's singing ghazals. That is the form that's going on. What you have done is you've put a more, today's rhythmic and melodic harmonic ideas onto it, but the core element is the same. So whether that is fusion or not, I don't know.
Okay.
So the core element is the same. Where fusion appeared in Bollywood was way back in 1940s, when music.
And to finish up the listening session, again, it's a fusion piece by, of course, Shakti.
सुनरी सखी चुनर भीगे जाए सुनरी सखी चुनर भीगे जाए देखे सब नारी सहेली जिया सुनरी सगी चुनर भीगे जाए सुनरी सखी
So I guess this brings us to an end of our formal component of the memorial to Zakir Ji. I thought it'd be lovely to open it up to the group to share their reflections and memories. One individual that I'd like to go ahead and invite to speak is a dear friend of mine who I recently actually was connected to through none other than Zakir Ji when Zakir Ji was here in from the Melbourne and Sydney concert with Kalaji, with the violin player and guna player, and Jayanti Ji. I was introduced to Kush, who is actually one of Zakir Ji's students, who lives in Brisbane, a phenomenal tabla player. And what's incredible about Zakir Ji as a human being is that he's an amazing connector. On that trip, this is my own personal reflection. On that trip, again, introduced to Kush, a Guru-bhai of mine from India, from Mumbai, who happens to also be Zakir Ji's sound technician or audio technician who travels with him, and an individual who is a student of Abbaji's. We all just happened to be there in Sydney at the same time because of Zakir Ji. And then what was lovely is that we came back to my place, we did some hard tabla riyaz, and then we had, a few nips of whiskey, listened to some great music, and it was a phenomenal night. So, Kush, I know you've been learning with Zakir Ji for a number of years. You were in fact at his funeral as well in San Francisco. If you could share your thoughts, memories of Zakir Ji, yeah.
Thanks, Steph. Hi, and also to the Melbourne Hindustani Classical Music Society for having me on this. It's actually on Monday. It was 4 weeks since the worst day for most of us, to be honest. I know. I think Yogesh Ji or Yogesh Dada summed it up quite well. And there's, I said to Stephan, he actually asked me today to share some thoughts. I said, Yogesh Dada is the source, so there's no one really trumping that. But yeah, I met Guruji when with my uncle, actually. I think he's on the call as well, Love Kush, and he's actually learned from Guruji as well in 2008 in Sydney Opera House when he came for the Masters of Percussion. He came with the Masters of Percussion tour. I think that's the first time he brought MOP to Australia in 2008. In November it was, I think it was. And being a massive fanboy, I was like, very similar to Stephan Bhai. I was, I grew up listening to him, emulating him, trying to be 1%, and I still fall short. But 1% of that incredible person that he was. I told my uncle, I said, we've got to wait after the concert. We have to meet him somehow. And so we waited in the where the buses are underneath the Opera House. And we stayed back for about 3.5 hours, and everyone was like, "You're crazy. He's never coming out." Anyway, he did with the whole group. And that's when I met him, and basically that's where my journey started in terms of asking him as a young 14-year-old that I want to learn from him, and he was so gracious, and that's the trait. I think if he was just an incredible musician, this loss wouldn't be so difficult. I think it's the little bit of Zakirji that's left in everyone's, that has met him, that has been around him. I think that's what makes this loss so unimaginable and so sudden and so tragic, that he just makes such a lasting impact. My wife was so blessed to meet him for the first time actually in Sydney. And he, we were only together for 2 or 3 days, I think it was, right? And even those 2 or 3 days, like, it's left a lasting impact on her in terms of, how he was and how he interacted with her. And that's just the most amazing thing, I think. And I think just going back to my first workshop. So, I mean, I attended most workshops in San Rafael, in San Francisco. And I remember my first workshop as a kid, like being completely freaked out that I'm in the room and like sitting a few meters away from the greatest of all time, and sitting there and just nothing went through my head. Like, it was just all over the shop. Like, it was just out of this incredible levels. And he noticed, and that was Zakirji. Like, he noticed, he calls you over and he goes, "You're struggling, aren't you?" And I go, "Yeah, definitely." And then, he puts a plan in place because, and he treated me like a little kid. I'm a 14-year-old, and he took me under his wing, and he gave me that treatment and gave me that love that you wouldn't expect from someone of his stature. But he had the time, and he wanted to see a difference, and that was the most amazing thing. So, yeah, the last 4 weeks, to be honest, has been pretty awful. But as a fraternity, we're sticking together, and these conversations are so beautiful. I mean, just going through all of that content you curated. I know it's not easy, but it's just so beautiful. I mean, and that's the beauty of the generation we live in today. Is
we have access to that, right?
We have access to that, right? I mean, there's a lot of stuff from Abbaji's stuff, from Abbaji's days that we don't have access to today. But Zakirji's brought a lot of that stuff to light. I mean, I just recently curated and put together all of my material that I've had over the years, and it's never ending, and it's actually quite confronting to go, wow, I've got so much material, and such a big blessing, because
as in your talim.
Yeah, but like all my notes, and then all my voice recordings, and all these things that we've collected over the years. It's incredible, and it's a blessing. And I think, and I say this to one of my Guru-bhais when I was actually in San Francisco. We were one of 40 to have the opportunity to be in his presence, on regular occurrences, out of 6 billion, we've done something, it's definitely written somewhere, and we must have done some good deed in some previous life. But it's a complete blessing, and I'll be forever grateful. It's never repayable for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love your comment that he's left a little bit of himself with everybody. Even some of the comments a little earlier today, where people were saying, look, they've felt Zakir Ji's presence in their own way, which is exactly him, right?
And I've over these last couple of weeks, I've actually spoken to people that have never met him, and yet through his music and through even YouTube, for example, have felt connected to him. And I think that's the most special thing. I think there's very few people on this earth, forget musicians, but just people on earth that actually have that sort of impact. And our Guruji was one of them.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kushbhai. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, man.
Is there anybody else that wanted to make a comment or any questions, any reflections?
In fact, Stephan, can I just invite everybody to come on video? This is now the open for all, open mic and open video segment. So let's gather, I think, as a community. I think Stephan, first of all, I think on behalf of all of us, thank you very much. You did a wonderful job.
Thanks.
I think hearing from Yogesh Ji was really special. And I'm actually very thrilled, Stephan, of that there's been a recurring theme, which I thought might happen, that all of us are really, I think, processing this grief. I thought this forum would be, a place where we could all kind of live that a little bit, process that a little bit. So I think I'm very heartened to see that that's happening.
Absolutely.
Can I just say one thing? Sorry, I've been in my garden, and it was a meditative exercise for me to do what I'm doing while I'm listening to all of this. Just to second the thoughts and emotions of everyone, it feels like a very strong connection that we have through Ustad. So one specific thing is, in my profession, part of my work is in teaching.
Tejraj, we've lost you a little bit. Tejraj is in country Victoria, out in Shepparton. Very fond of his classical music. Has two precocious children who are learning classical music even with that distance and are doing really well. Tejraj, you're back with us. Go ahead.
So yeah, thanks, Saurabh, for giving the brief about me. So as I was saying, I don't know how much was missed, but a significant part of my role is teaching in my profession. And one of the things that I do at the beginning of every academic year is play this, I think it's a 40-odd second clip of Ustad Ji on YouTube, where he talks about learning and teaching, and his words, I'm sure everybody would have seen it, is he says a teacher does not teach, it is a student that listens. That's the student that learns. And as we've heard here as well, he gives the analogy of a river. That the teacher's teachings are a form of a river, and it is up to the student to take a cup full or a bucket full out of it. So that clip is pretty much there on YouTube. So I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that, yeah, his metaphors and the way he, as I mentioned, the way he packages information is just phenomenal. Saikat, I can see that you're here as well. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'm sure everybody knows Saikat. It might be off.
Oh, hello. Yeah.
How are you? I'd love to hear your thoughts. As you all know, Saikat Bhai is an incredible sitarist.
Thanks. So I had the fortune of meeting Ustad Ji just a few months ago while he was there, and as a student of Indian classical music, I introduced myself and told him what I'm trying to do for the last few years. And when I told about my Guruji Ustad Shahid Parvez Khan from Home Learning, he said two things. He said, oh, very good, wah. And then he said, practice karte jao, riyaz karte jao. So of course, I mean, invaluable words. And I met him twice, once inside the venue and once outside the venue while Kush was there. And yeah, so those words, and the way he says that, not just for the sake of saying, you can understand how sincerely he says that, and it's almost like a blessing. I saw him when I was very young in Kolkata a long time ago. I can't remember the name, the year 82 or something, when Pandit Ravi Shankar ji and Ustad Ali Akbar Khan sahab played, and Ustad Alara Khan and Zakir ji played in a place in Kolkata called Netaji Indoor Stadium. It's a fantastic recording over there. In those days, we used to listen in the cassettes thereafter. So at that time, I didn't understand much. That it sounded fantastic. We went to the backstage and saw them from a distance, and that was all we could get. But yeah, I mean, from such a great master, we can only get these masters to see once in a lifetime, I think. And today's session on Yogesh, he was so nice, so humble, so fantastic. I met him in Kolkata a couple of years ago, and I mean, yeah, they all exude that sort of brilliance, that thing which we just see on paper and in the music and in the concerts when we see them. So a fantastic thing that MHM says and Sauravji, they all arrange this. And thank you everyone for today's.
Amazing, beautiful words.
You know, Stephan, can I just jump in with something? We can't let this session finish without mentioning that ad, without talking about that ad, because let's face it, that was what catapulted, Zakir Saab into national, the national psyche. So can we please say it?
Wah Taj.
Taj nahi, wah Ustad nahi, wah Taj.
Wah Taj.
Because that's I think almost my childhood memory of is that first memory is that ad.
Yeah. But the other brilliance is what he did with that exposure as well, right? Like it could have just come and gone and that was that, right? But he leveraged that, which is incredible.
A fun fact for you guys all, but have you guys, I'm sure you're all familiar with the Lacoste brand, so the crocodile brand, yeah? So Zakir ji actually wore a kurta one day to class, and it was a Lacoste kurta.
Oh, wow.
So they were trialing with him a range of kurtas by Lacoste.
Amazing. Yeah.
So he had one in every color.
Incredible. Absolutely incredible.
I also, Rahul, is that you or is it another Rahul? Is it Rahul Bhattacharya?
It's me, but I'm on mute. Yeah.
यार तुम कैसे चुप बैठे हो तब से?
No, I'm listening. It is wonderful. Just absorbing and all these incredible thoughts and recollections. Yeah. So again, thank you for organizing.
I was going to say, Rahul, I think you actually pointed me to this movie. I forget the name. That movie with Shabana Azmi and Aruna Irani and Zakir Saab.
That was Saaz, right? He was the music director of the movie Saaz, which was layered on top of the Asha Bhosle, Lata Mangeshkar family. Yeah.
But that character that he played was just it just felt like that was him. That was him playing himself. This really, this person of complete abandon of, exactly all the things that we've just heard today. This sort of center of, all focus wherever he is.
Yeah, well, the one thing I will mention is, the way senior musicians used to talk about Zakir ji, and I've had two musicians, both absolute stalwarts, both my gurus, Sarod Maestro and Sitar Maestro, tell me in private that one said that there are only two tabla players whose lay doesn't move. They are like a metronome. In the older times, it used to be Pandit Kishan Maharaj. He was not a laykar, but a laydar. Like if he held on to the teka, it would not move. And it was in modern times Zakir ji. And the other one, which my Guruji Ustad Ali Khan Sahab said, is tabla players have one strong hand and one not so strong hand.
Yeah.
Because Zakir Ji is the only player of modern times whose both hands are completely balanced.
Absolutely agree.
And coming from Ustad Amjad Khan, that high praise.
Yeah.
Yes. So, and I think just watching him, I think we'll all of us who went to his Melbourne concert last June. First of all, it was so shocking because he was in his spirits. He was, full of energy, and then to suddenly hear the news. But the main thing, is that he played like he was so much in the moment that energy used to infect everyone in the auditorium. It was not a contrived, okay, I'm going to do this. Like he was so much in the moment, and that he used to play in joy, and that I think is the energy that everyone used to respond to. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Now, again, thanks. I would like to thank Stephan for this wonderful curation, and also obviously for Saurabh and everyone else. For this is wonderful just listening to Yogesh Ji and everyone. Yeah.
Thank you,
I think,
Rahul.
Stephan, that was a real coup, I've got to say. I think being able to hear that really personal perspective, I thought was, superb. We could have spoken about it all amongst ourselves, but that was something else.
Yeah. No, yeah. It was wonderful for Yogesh to come along and share his personal experiences. I'm just mindful of the time as well. We've definitely gone over, but it was well worth it.
Well worth it, Stephan. That's why I didn't say anything. I just said let it run. I think on the calendar invite I'd sent out, there was an hour session. We're running at double that, but I don't think anyone's complaining. So is there anyone else who wants to share a perspective, a memory, a reflection, a comment? Perhaps a last one from the bleachers, as it said. Well, I think final word with you then, Stephan.
Yeah, I think as mentioned previously, I think we are very blessed to be in an era where we're still able to access his music. And even though he's passed, it's clear that he's still within us all, and we can access his brilliance still. So, we're definitely blessed to be living in this era. Thank you so much for everybody attending. I really appreciate it, and look forward to seeing you in person soon.
Yes, and hopefully at the festival that we have coming up, Stephan, at least, and if not, then the April concert with Yogesh Ji.
Absolutely.
But so we have our Melbourne International Festival of Hindustani Classical Music that's coming up 8th, 9th of March. Saikath was on stage with his guru, giving accompaniment, Saikath, giving moral accompaniment. There was a wonderful concert that Shahid Ji delivered.
It was fantastic, really fantastic.
Really, Jinjoti like we've never heard before. So, please, those of you who are not from Melbourne, do think of coming down. I think, Stephan, you've been to one of those, right? You've been to one of these.
Absolutely. Perhaps for those that aren't aware, who are the artists that are coming for the festival?
Sure.
Share the link.
So let's start with Tabla. So we have Pandit Ramdas Palsuleji. He's the Tabla player we've invited this time. So in terms of the lead acts, we've tried something quite different. It's an all women cast this year. So there'll be 4 concerts. The headline act is Shruti Sarolikarji, vocal. And then we have Indrani Mukherjee, who's a wonderful vocalist, particularly in the semi-classical Thumri genre. And then we have Ragini Shankar on the violin. And we have the flute sisters, Devapriya and Suchishmita Chatterjee. So, a good sort of variety of genres of instruments and so on. And then we have Vinay Mishra on the harmonium will be giving company to the vocalists. So that's the cast. mhcms.org is the website. Please book in and come, and we'll look forward to seeing you there.
Absolutely.
And then the Yogesh concert, obviously, that's a national tour, right, Stephan?
Currently, it's Sydney and Melbourne.
Yeah.
And then that's currently where it's at.
Fantastic. Well, Stephan, again, thank you very much. I think wonderfully anchored, and really, really glad that we could assemble. It's obviously a somber occasion, sad occasion, but I think as a community coming together, it's been a good release, I think, for all of us.
Absolutely. Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you all of you.
Stephan. Thanks, Saurabhji.
No problem.
Bye-bye.